Hello, I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. Coming up after the news, it's Philosophy Talk.
Today, gambling. Big issue in California. Ken, 2 propositions that will increase gambling. The governor trying to keep it to a minimum, negotiating with Indian tribes. Exciting stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea. Great idea to me, John. I love a good game of poker, for example, but I don't really think of that as gambling. For me, it's an investment.
Well, fools like you are who the state exploits in its drive to soak up money from the gambling public. I think it's all a pretty trashy business myself, Ken.
John, lighten up. As long as you know what you're doing and are in control of yourself, gambling is just good, clean, harmless fun.
Oh, yeah. Gambling, some people are addicted. Organized crime, prostitution, sleazy casinos. Now the state's involved. Bad stuff.
I bet you we philosophers can straighten it out.
10 will get you 20, you can't.
Welcome to Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence. I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. We're coming to you from the lovely studios of KALW Information Radio in San Francisco.
We're continuing conversations that have been going on for a long time at Philosophy Corner, Stanford University. We're talking about gambling today. What's philosophical about, you got to be philosophical about your losses, but what's philosophical about gambling, Ken?
Well, there's all kinds of philosophical issues. There are conceptual issues about gambling. The one question is just, what is gambling? That's a big philosophical question.
That's the old Platonic question. What is gambling? Is there really one thing that is gambling? Horse racing and poker and slot machines all really belong to the same kind of activity?
It's clear that all forms of gambling are forms of risk-taking, but there's also investment. Is that investment is a form of risk-taking? What's the difference, if any, between investing and gambling?
So is there some essence to gambling, something that all forms of gambling have alike, that playing the stock market and investing and insurance and all that stuff don't? So those are conceptual issues. That ought to give us some philosophical stuff to bite on.
There's one more conceptual issue because I have
you
to
think
admit, I
you're
love
lucky.
to play.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I'm a lucky poker player. I'm also a skilled poker player, but I also think, is luck a coherent concept?
Is luck a coherent concept? Well, we'll see. It seems to me you could look at somebody at the end of their life and say, well, they were lucky or they weren't. But I don't think there's some kind of property you have throughout your life that you can know about and rely on. I've been lucky up till now, but I don't think that's because there's some part of me that means luck. But there's also social issues. We've got the state of California now that is driving people into gambling, or at least enticing them to gamble with advertisements about what fun it is to win the lottery. Is that a socially responsible behavior for a sovereign state?
That's a darn good question. Look, because especially if you think about it, the gamble that states, not just California, but states all over this country, these mega lotteries. It's just it's amazing how we've gotten this lottery fever. But the gambles that people are enticed into by the states are really bad gambles. The odds are really, 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 really against you. But the state ought to protect your interests, not run a confidence scheme on you.
If you look at the Constitution of California, you can see the historical change and ambivalence. The first thing about gambling is no lotteries. It's outlawed. All kinds of things are outlawed and prohibited. Then you skip down a few things and says, oh, by the way, the state can run a lottery. That's okay. So what are the social and philosophical and moral issues? But there's also a personal dimension.
Well, yeah, there's one question, is gambling ever rational? And, unfortunately, it turns out that gambling, for some people, is highly addictive. Gambling is like the crack, slot machines, for example, is like the crack cocaine of gambling. Many people get addicted to this stuff. And you might wonder whether the state should endorse something that, we ban illegal drugs. Should we do the same with gambling?
So there's really, should it be prohibited if it's addictive? Should it at least not be solicited by the state?
Our roving philosophical reporter, Amy Standen, went out to investigate just how addictive gambling can be. She files this report.
Gambling is really interesting because it's a behavior. It's not like a substance. It's not like alcohol. It's not like a drug. But it has very potent psychoactive properties.
Dr. James Westphal treats patients for gambling and other addictive behaviors at San Francisco General Hospital.
There's parts of our brain that are connected to the sense of pleasure, fun, and in nature they reinforce things that are associated with survival, eating, sex. What we've learned over the last 10 or 15 years is that the drugs of abuse sort of interact with those reward pathways and sort of hijack them. So the entire focus of a person's life goes towards getting the drug and experiencing the reward, and the other things like taking care of themselves drop away. Gambling is a behavior. In some people, not everyone, literally has the same effect as cocaine. It stimulates that center and is intensely euphorogenic. I treated a person for gambling problems who was like a professional football player. He said that after he retired, he could never capture the feeling of running out into the field and people cheering for him. And then he got into gambling. And he said that when he had $50,000 on the blackjack table, it was the same feeling as being out in the field. And he lived for that. And he said he didn't gamble to win money. He gambled to get that feeling. For other people, it's disassociating. They get a numbness or a disconnection. It would be a tranquilizing effect. It'd be an effect like an opiate, like a pain medication, where your feelings get numbed. One of my friends in Louisiana was a neuropsychologist, and he found that for most people, after something like 17 to 18 minutes of playing a slot machine, that basically they've developed a functional lobotomy. The same effect is basically separating your frontal lobes, a part of your brain that is concerned about planning and the future and social judgments, all that sort of thing. That just gets turned off. It gets disconnected. And some people like that. It's a respite from whatever problems they're struggling with in their life. So it's like a brief escape. Addiction just means that something has taken over your life. And very clearly for some people, gambling does that. They will steal, they'll commit crimes. It distorts one's sense of reality. That's the very definition, that an addiction interferes with free will. And whether it's a physical substance, whether it's alcohol, whether it's cocaine, whether it's gambling, when they become addictive, it's at least interfering with free will.
This is Amy Standen for Philosophy Talk.
I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor.
Our guest today to talk about gambling is Will Barrett, who's a research fellow at the University of Melbourne and author of a paper entitled What's Wrong with Gambling? He joins us today from the studios of the Australian Broadcasting Company.
Will, it's a pleasure having you with us. Welcome to Philosophy Talk.
It's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
So look, Amy Standen's piece was about addiction, and addicted gambling is obviously a problem. You know, you lose your autonomy, you're not acting rationally. But I want to focus on just for a little bit on the rationality of gambling if you're not addicted. I mean, could a non-addictive person, and I'm thinking of, casino gambling and lotteries and that sort of thing, could a non-addicted person rationally, freely choose to gamble? I mean, tell me what you think about
they could. They could, depending on what they wanted to get out of gambling. I mean, if they just wanted some pleasure from it, if they was part of their normal social activities, and if they were willing to acknowledge that they were likely to lose some money, which I think inevitably you will do if you play on the slot machines, or as we call them in Australia, the pokies, for any length of time. Yeah, the pokies. But if you believe that you will win by playing on the pokies or the slot machines, and you continue to do that, that's what motivates you. I think that there's some sort of failure of rationality involved there.
Isn't there kind of a middle ground there? I mean, I buy lottery tickets, I must admit, even though I don't think the state of California should advertise the lottery and maybe shouldn't even have the lottery. But when I buy lottery tickets, I think of it as buying fantasy time. Between the time I buy it and the time I don't win, it's a little easier to fantasize about being a multimillionaire than it would be if I didn't buy them. So it seems to me irrational to spend, it seems to me okay, rational, maybe not optimally rational, to spend 10 or 20 bucks for 2 or 3 days worth of multimillionaire fantasies.
I agree with that. I also buy lottery tickets. We have a state lottery here in Victoria, the state of Victoria in Australia, and each week My wife and I buy a ticket in it, and we sit around and imagine what we'll do if we win. But the amount that we put out each week is, $5 or $6, and the amount that we might win is about $1 million. So on that basis, I think it's irrational, given that the expense is so low and the benefit's so high, and given that spending that amount each week isn't really going to send us broke. But I think that playing on the poker machines, it's a bit different from that, because people, partially because of the issues about addiction, but even without that, people spend a lot more than $5, and the chances of winning a large amount are so, well, in fact, the machines, at least in Australia, don't pay out the very, very large amounts. Even the jackpots aren't very large. And the jackpots are so rare that you have about the same chance of winning a jackpot that you would have of winning $1 million in a lottery.
But what if you're somebody like Ken who feels that he's basically a lucky person? Can't he say, well, it's irrational for most people to play the slot machines or the pokies, but I'm a lucky guy.
Yeah, I mean, I've won these things, 10 times in the past, whatever, time period, and I think I'm going to do it one more time. Why not?
Well, I'm very pleased that you think that, Ken, but I think that... and I'm
the casinos are too, are you? Right?
Yeah, the casinos love you. I'm sure that you could go on thinking that and probably make you very positive about what was going to happen in your life. But if you actually believe that luck is something that you can rationally trust, that you can expect to keep on applying to you because it's applied in the past, I think you're just simply misconceiving the nature of luck itself. My view about luck is that it's a rationally unexpected events. It's just chance and with good or bad fortune associated. But if you can rationally expect it, then it's not luck.
Let me take you through this a little more slowly. You're confusing me a bit. So look, I don't know. There's a 1 in 10 chance of my winning whatever, some bet, right? But I make the bet 10 times and I win it 9 times. And why shouldn't I believe that I'm a lucky guy? I mean, I know that if John were to do this, he would only win probably 1 in 10 times. But I win it. I win it more often than the other guy. What's so irrational about my believing? I'm lucky. I mean, I certainly have been lucky, haven't I?
I think that's the crucial point. You have been lucky, and you might say you've been a lot luckier than a lot of other people. Certainly you've been a lot luckier than me if you've had that happen to you. But if you think that because you've been lucky so far, you're going to continue to be lucky, you're assuming that the property of luck, or that there is such a property as being lucky in the same ways as a property as being skilled at chess or something like that, or tall. It's not, luck just isn't a property that can continue in that sort of way, or we can be justified in believing will continue, because I think luck by its nature involves chance and involves the unexpected, as well as involving good or bad things happening to you.
There's kind of twin fallacies here, right? There's this famous gambler's fallacy, the maturation of odds. I've been losing, or, black's been coming up a lot, so it's red's turn. I've been losing, so it's my turn to win. And then luck is kind of the opposite. I've been winning, so I'll continue to win. They both can't be based on statistics, and it's hard to imagine what kind of internal property you could have that would make you lucky.
That's right. And even as a disposition, like the idea somehow I have a disposition to have good things happen to me more often than other people have good things happen to them. I just don't think in the end you can sort of go around and say, oh, well, this person is disposed to be lucky, because if they are disposed to be lucky, you're assuming that it's something that is predictable. And I think by its nature it's not predictable. I understand your points. You guys are both making good, deep points. But I had to say, it would be pretty, what are you supposed to do? Walk around believing bad things are going to happen to you? I mean, I don't know. We're going to have to let our callers in on this. You're listening to Philosophy Talk. Our guest is live from Australia, is Will Barrett of the University of Melbourne. We're talking about gambling and whether it's ever rational to gamble. We'd like you to join our discussion. You can do so by calling 415-841-4134.
Step up to the table. Put your money where or put your mouth where you might put your money, or something like that. Yeah. Give us a question. It's a good bet that Philosophy Talk will be right back.
You never count your money when you're sitting at the table. There'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done. You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em.
Kenny Rogers singing The Gambler. We're back on Philosophy Talk. I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. Today we're talking with Will Barrett of the University of Melbourne down in Australia about gambling.
Join us. The number is 415-841-4134. That's 415-841-4134.
We've been talking about, the rationality of gambling, the illusion of luck, and that sort of stuff. We may have a few more questions about that in a little bit, though. We're going to turn to talking about kind of the social cost of gambling. Call us with your questions if you have stories of personal struggles or your other people's struggles with a gambling addiction, or if you want to weigh in on the policy issues, we'd be glad to know what you think.
Will, let me ask you one more. Let me try one more stab at making casino gambling rational, if you don't mind. I like to play roulette, and I say to myself, well, I'm in control here because aside from the little green things, chances are even, red or black, and I can quit when I'm losing and continue when I'm winning. So doesn't that kind of give me the edge?
That might give you the edge, although we do get back to issues about addiction and compulsion here, like whether, in fact, you're being given reinforcing signals which make you want to continue even after you might have started losing more than you originally thought you'd be willing to lose, or would go beyond a point that you thought you should go beyond. That's one thing. The other thing is that I don't know whether this directly addresses your point, but I think that the casinos aren't in the business of losing money. They're in the business of making money.
And lots of it.
And lots of it, yeah. And so I think that you can reasonably assume, or you ought to assume, that, in fact, even though you might win big, it's highly unlikely that over the long term you're going to continue winning, because if that were the case, the casinos would go out of business and you wouldn't be able to play the roulette wheel at all.
Yeah, I got to tell you that every gambler that I know, every moderately dedicated gambler, goes into the casino or stands at the crap table or at the roulette wheel and says, I'm going to win. They believe they're going to win. And if they were not to believe that, you know what? They wouldn't gamble. Right? It's really strange. I mean,
well, I'm a moderately unsuccessful gambler, and I never believe I'm going to win. So I guess that's a confirming
right.
confirming instance. I think the fallacy in my thing is that you can't, if you throw out all the roulette episodes where you start losing, you've also thrown out all the ones where you end up winning after you start losing. So you really can't affect the odds by knowing when to quit. At least that's last time I thought it through. That's what I decided.
That sounds right to me. Yes.
But now the casinos really make it easy to take this addictive step. You go in, you say, I enjoy playing the slot machines or playing roulette. I'm going to blow $100. I don't enjoy the opera. I could blow $100 going to the opera. Nobody would call me irrational. Why should they call me irrational for this? But then that $100 is gone. You see the ATM over there. There's no clocks. It's pretty seductive. Is that fair? And is that the kind of thing the state ought to be involved in? I mean, because I don't know what they do in Victoria, but in California they put on ads showing winners and how it changed their lives. And they make you feel like you've really got a chance of becoming rich.
It's very similar here, and when someone gets a payout, even though it might be a very small payout on a slot machine, there's bells and whistles going off all over the place, and I think that reinforces, other gamblers' feelings that they're going to win. There's winning going on around here, and I'm going to join in that soon. I'm going to participate in that. I think there's also a lot of other techniques they use. They can track individuals' playing habits and adjust the odds accordingly, adjust the payouts accordingly. Apparently they can do that. There's lots of things like free drinks, free meals, and so on. So the aim is to keep you there for as long as they can keep you there. And that sort of gives us an idea and reinforces the idea that, in fact, over the long term you will lose.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a crucial thing. The longer they keep you there, the more likely you are to lose.
Well, but they're playing a game to infinity. I mean, so they're going to operate forever, and so they know that over the long term they're going to win. But look, there is a chance of your winning, and if it's a large enough stake, even if the chance is small, then what they call in the jargon the expected return of the gamble. I mean, no gamble in the casino except on rare occasion it has a positive return for the player. But if you really, really value having $1 million, And if you're willing to sink $500 to get that $1 million, I mean, why is that? You say it's never rational. I mean, why is that not a rational gamble if you really value the $1 million?
Well, you have an example in one of your papers where if I don't get a taxi back to town, I'm going to die. I don't have time to walk, and something's come up. I don't have enough money for a taxi. I've got $5. The only chance I have is to play the slot machines and hope that I'll get enough for a taxi. In that case, is it rational for me to play the slot machines?
Yeah, I'd say in that case it's rational, because if you balance off the benefits against the losses, they become pretty spectacularly desirable it becomes spectacularly desirable to take the gamble, because if you don't take the gamble, you're going to die. I think that's a sort of extreme example that philosophers sometimes like to use.
But Ken, I think, sees that structure as possibly more common.
Right, that's what I'm wondering. Why isn't that structure more common? I mean, why can't... Tell me more about why you think it's never rational to engage in casino gambling.
I don't think it's ever never rational, I should say. I think that it's irrational if your aim is to improve your overall financial well-being from gambling. And that's a different matter, because the person who, in your story or in my story, who needs the money to get the taxi home because they've got some urgent to get home, and the only way they're going to do it is by increasing their holdings from $5 to $20, say, at the nearby casino, that's not the same as thinking, by gambling, I'm going to improve my overall financial well-being, or for that matter, make myself rich. And I think that engaging in that sort of gambling, casino gambling, with the aim of getting rich, or even of improving your overall financial well-being, is deluded. And I think that given the structure of means ends reasoning, of practical reasoning, then it starts looking a bit on the irrational side, given that you've got good reason to believe that it's not going to make you rich, but you go ahead and do it.
I take your point, Will. We have some callers on the line. Stephen in San Francisco. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, Stephen.
Thank you.
What's your question?
Well, I wanted to comment on your question as to whether it's ever rational, and even using to gamble, and even using this idea of your last $5 to get in the taxi. That's not even rational. Maybe it's going to cost you $15 to get to the hospital. If you pay $5, you're going to at least get a third of the way there. You can't guarantee that with the casino. But having lived in Nevada, I think I have a little inside track on this. And I remember hearing once that if you find a casino with a for sale sign in the window and the carpet is worn out, that's the one to go to. You're not going to do that because it's rigged against you. Gambling, that's why they call it gambling. It's a game of chance.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Hey, but I take Stephen's point, and it echoes your it's even stronger than what you were saying, Will, because he doesn't even think the taxi cab thing is an instance of gambling. But help me. Okay, people invest. That's risk-taking. Well, what's the difference between gambling, say, and investing? That makes investing rational, but gambling not.
Well, it's risk-taking, but I don't think that taking a risk is sufficient for something being called a gamble. I mean, there's lots of risks you take. I took a risk coming here this morning because someone might have driven through a red light and crashed into me. I don't believe I was gambling by driving from my house down to the ABC studios. That's just one point, and probably a fairly trivial one. I think there's other reasons for distinguishing gambling from investment. One of which is that investment isn't a zero-sum game. I mean, that overall you don't have to have losers if you have winners in investment. But in gambling, I think you do. And the other thing about investment, the investment industry is aimed at increasing people's well-being. I take it financial well-being, whereas the gambling industry is aimed at increasing the well-being of the investors in the gambling business rather than the gamblers, the people that they're gambling with, the punters, that is.
You're listening to Philosophy Talk. Our topic is gambling. Our guest is Will Barrett from the University of Melbourne. Will, I mean, gambling is irrational, except that if you do it for some other purpose, not expecting to get money, it may be rational. Is there any wiggle room for the state to say, well, we're providing a benefit that ought to be well regulated in the lottery? If it's such a natural desire to play the lottery that if we didn't do it, somebody else would provide it, numbers games or something like that. So on balance, social welfare is served by the state having a lottery. Those kind of considerations move you?
Well, not especially, because the idea that it's a benefit, I mean, if you say people want it, therefore it constitutes a benefit, I'm not entirely convinced by that argument for a start. And secondly, on that basis, you'd legislate virtually everything. You'd make legally permissible, virtually any activity, and clearly that is not going to be the case and shouldn't be the case. But I think the other crucial thing is that, on my view anyway, on my sort of theory of gambling, that the state should, if it's a good, if it's a good state, try to encourage people's capacity for exercising autonomy, for leading autonomous lives, for taking control of their own lives. And I think that the sort of irrationality involved in gambling can undermine autonomy. And therefore, if states are in the business of promoting gambling, they're also in the business of undermining autonomy. And I think there's a conflict there with the proper role of the state.
Well, I think you've got that right. You can join our discussion by calling 415-841-4134. You can send us an email by going to our webpage, www.philosophytalk.org, and clicking on the comments button. We have a caller on the line now. That's Rob in Los Gatos. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, Rob.
Hi there. I guess if I could just address the fact that I feel I'm a rational gambler because I always go in with the expectation that my expected value is positive. The primary case that I was thinking of was in playing blackjack in the casinos. And in the past, I've been a card counter, and I've been financially successful at doing it, and I wouldn't have gotten into it had I not felt with a reasonable degree of certainty that I was going to be financially better off afterwards than before. By the same token, I also play the lottery, the California lottery, whenever it gets over the value, which after taxes is greater than the odds against winning it. Now, you have to bring in all sorts of considerations as far as like
what value is that? Where it's
about
actually
82, depending on your tax bracket.
82 million? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Rob, thanks for the comment. Will, that's a direct challenge to your claim about the irrationality of gambling. I mean, blackjack is the one thing I was referring to. There is a point when the cards are actually in the player's favor, and the casinos do everything they can to not let you discover that point. But if you do...
I believe under Nevada law, the casinos can throw you out if you card count because you're converting it from a game of chance to a game of skill, and games of skill of that sort aren't allowed in Nevada.
Yeah, I think that this is a really interesting point because, and I thank Rob for bringing it up, I think you need to fundamentally distinguish in gambling between where you employ skills or some sort of specialist information that you have as against games of pure chance. And earlier on in your introduction, you talked about the definition of gambling, and I think this is one of the things that, like an analysis of gambling, should include, that there are forms of gambling where certain skills can be applied, and those skills can make it more likely you're going to win. Now, you still want to say that you're gambling because earlier on Ken talked about liking to play poker and think he's a pretty good poker player. Now, I take it that he's a skillful poker player, like a lot of philosophers are, and on that basis has probably a justified expectation of winning if he's playing against people who don't have the same levels of skill. So I don't want to rule out that sort of gambling. I certainly don't want to moralise about gambling and saying it's all wrong. But I think that where I'm talking about the irrationality of gambling, I'm talking about games especially where no skill can be involved, such as slot machines, or where people play and they simply lack the skills and they're playing against people who do have those skills. So I think that there's a sort of a whole nest of issues there to do with the definition of gambling and the role of skill in making certain gambling activities rational compared with other ones.
You know, unfortunately, about poker and being skilled, it only shows up at infinity, you know.
Yeah, but you're very healthy, so it'll last a long time.
We have more callers on the line now. Marcia in San Francisco. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, Marcia.
Hi. I have a retrograde remark. I want to blow up your theory about the taxi ride and $5.
Okay.
Your other caller said, well, you just go a third of the way. No, no, no. You get in the taxi, you tell the taxi to go where you want to go, and you stiff the driver. If you have a conscience, you write down his number and pay him later. But it's not a problem in gambling. It's like a problem in just logic.
Your point is well taken, Marge. I think Will wanted to give us an example in which it would be rational to take the bad odds in a casino. Suppose that the taxi driver knows that you would stiff him or something. I mean, you could build in, circumstances.
I think people have made good points about the particular example, but not the principle that Will was using the example to illustrate, I suspect.
Will, you want to weigh in on that, or should I move on to the next caller?
Oh, move on to the next caller. I'm enjoying the comments that are being made.
Okay, so Anne in Palo Alto, welcome to Philosophy Talk, Anne.
Hi. I was wondering, I don't know if you've addressed this yet, but it sounds as though you're assuming that which is rational is always that's best. But it seems to me we do a lot of things that are irrational but that aren't necessarily bad.
Why? You got one in mind?
Well, why have kids? It's really irrational. Kids are expensive. They could turn out badly. All sorts of things. And furthermore, and hey, the human race has to die out eventually. Why not now?
Well, those are good points. Kids are wonderful, but they go through a difficult phase between 2 and 30, I've noticed. But anyway.
Right. And then they become parents, and then
and then another difficult phase begins.
Right. Thanks, Anne, for the call. Will, do you have any particular comment on that? We do lots of irrational things. Lots of good behavior isn't, lots of life-affirming behavior isn't the outcome of just sort of rationality.
Yeah, I think that recent philosophical work on the rationality of emotions has actually recognised this more, that you can't think about rationality purely as, strict means ends reasoning, or purely in terms of the justification of certain degrees of belief, which is a technical term, I suppose. But no, there's having children is. I have children, and if someone told me it was irrational to have children, I suppose I'd be offended, because I think it's a wonderful thing to do, and on that basis probably rational. But it's unlike gambling, because it's unlike certain sorts of gambling, because having children doesn't have built into it that's something that I'm not going to realise my aims in having children in the first place.
Yeah, this is a Philosophy Talk. We're discussing gambling, the pros and cons, the irrationality and rationality of it. We'll get in more into the social cost and benefits of it after a short break. Our guest today is William Barrett. You can join our discussion by calling 415-841-4134. That's 415-841-4134. Or send us an email at philosophytalk.org. We'll be right back.
That was the oldest permanently established floating crap game in New York from the musical Guys and Dolls. I'm John Perry, and this is Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence, but we'll take a bet on it. No, I'm Ken Taylor. We're joined today by William Barrett from the University of Melbourne, down under, and we're having a conversation about gambling. Why don't you give us a call, join our discussion. We'd like to know what you think about the social cost and benefits of gambling. Should the state permit gambling? Should it have lotteries? Is gambling ever rational? Will, I want to ask you, given you have said that casino gambling, except for kind of pleasure, and at pretty low stakes, I would imagine, unless you're very wealthy, is an irrational undertaking. And then we haven't really talked about addiction. And I don't know what it's like in Australia, but in the old days, gambling was the province of organized crime, and it's still around. Right? Should the state just say, this is not going to take place? Should it just prohibit gambling for all those reasons?
Well, probably not, because given that there are certain pleasures that can be had from gambling, which seem to be quite acceptable pleasures, they don't involve irrationality, and they're fairly harmless, I think that maybe the state shouldn't ban it all out, or ban it totally, because the consequences of banning it totally probably would include increased levels of crime, because where you have where you have gambling entirely banned, you have illegal casinos and SP bookies and so on coming in to fill the void. But I don't think the state should be in the business of promoting gambling, which is what happened in Victoria, which is the Australian state I live in, where there was a massive increase in the amount of gambling to the point where now I think Victoria has more slot machines per head than any other place in the world. It's got an enormous casino slap bang in the middle of the city, not stuck out in the in Nevada somewhere, in the middle of the one of the major capitals in Australia, and where there are considerable social problems associated with it, and where it turns out that most of the losses that people make on gambling are incurred by people who can least afford to make those losses. And so there are social issues that come up, and I think that it's the government's responsibility not to create a situation where those social issues develop.
I've seen statistics that a typical casino gets about 25% of its take from 1% of the gamblers, and those are people who are typically seriously addicted to gambling. Does that strike you as about right?
Yeah, look, the figures on gambling are widely available, and there's a lot of research done, empirical research done, and that particular figure I've heard as well. So it's two things. It's the people with the addictions who are providing the profits to the casino, and also, and it's an associated group, I think there's probably a crossover between the two groups, the people who can least afford it. In other words, the people in the lower socioeconomic brackets, people who are well off and have satisfying jobs and so on, are less likely to go and spend hour after hour in a pub or a casino playing a slot machine and losing their money.
Let me ask you one quick question about this. You say the state should not promote this, but should the state? I mean, the state benefits from it, even casino gambling, through taxation, and it generates a lot of tax revenue. And states often say, well, we can spare ourselves the burden of other forms of taxation because our citizens don't really want to pay those other forms of taxation. I mean, what do you think about that? The state saying, oh, here's a nice tax stream.
Well, the points that have been made about this, I don't know whether these are so much philosophical points, but they do relate to issues in political philosophy, are that this form of taxation is regressive, specifically because the people who pay the most, whose money ends up providing the taxation, which is gained by the state from gambling, are the people who can least afford it. Whereas where you have a progressive tax system, the more you earn, the higher rate of tax you pay. And that's often thought to be a better or more just system of taxation than one where the people who earn the least or have the least pay the most.
Maybe we should have progressive casinos where your income, you have to pass a means test to get at certain slot machines, the ones that pay well, and if the more you earn, the worse your odds. Well, maybe we'll get a proposition on that on the next ballot.
We probably could. We have some callers on the line. Chris in San Francisco has been waiting for a while. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, Chris.
Howdy. Thinking about the addiction part of it, that this is really a chemical addiction, even though it's a process. It's about the internal brain chemicals when you win or hope to win and all that stuff. So it's really quite a chemical addiction. And in a sense, it is therefore rational if the addict finds what he or she needs to complete what they're looking for, even if it's an endless cycle. It's certainly rational. It's rational for an addict to take their hit.
Thanks for the comment, Chris. We also have Will in San Francisco. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, Will.
Oh, great.
Well, what's your comment?
Oh, hi. I had a question following up about the question about blackjack earlier, and how I think John said that in the state of Nevada that if you're accounting, that's your grounds for being dismissed from a casino because then it becomes a game of skill, whereas it's a game of chance if the casino's doing it.
Yeah.
And it just seems fundamentally unfair that a large corporation or the owners of the casino are protected in a game of chance and are able to make huge amounts of money, whereas a private citizen, if they're utilizing some kind of a skill or ability, just using their own mind as opposed to like writing stuff down or something like that, or using a foot counter, it can be thrown out of the casino for that, and it just seems fundamentally unfair. And I just sort of want to get your reflections or comments on that.
Well, I think two good points. First, that if you're addicted, then in a way it is rational to do what you're addicted to because you get so much pleasure, diminution of pain out of it. But there is an important difference, isn't there, Will, between what's rational and what's really expresses freedom and autonomy.
That's for Will Barrett, you mean, right?
Yeah. And then Will makes a very good point that Nevada is not a very fair place.
Thanks for the call, Will. Will Barrett, what do you think about that?
Look,
either of the callers' points.
The theory of rational addiction has been around for a while. It's Becker. I think it's Lawrence Becker is the economist who is best known for presenting that theory. Look, it might be, if you're addicted, it might be rational to spend your money on satisfying your addiction, but it doesn't mean that you're acting autonomously. All it means is that you're sort of giving yourself over even to an even greater extent to the demands of the addiction. So my concern is with the connection between rationality and autonomy rather than rationality and addiction.
What do you think about the unfairness point? I mean, the casino. Why should there be these things that can that have the odds stacked in their favors? Why should there be such an industry?
Well, that's actually, just to make a point on the side, that's actually even clearer in the case of slot machines, or poker machines as we call them, because they're designed to make a payout less than 100%. It doesn't matter how much money goes in. There's no way that, given the programming of the machines, that they're going to pay out less than a certain amount. I think in the state of Victoria, I think it's 87% is what they're obliged to pay out. So that looks even more unfair. But on the other hand, there are a lot of industries which seem to have particular, have the right to charge more than the actual cost.
Yeah, that's true. But one of the things, you don't find casinos competing with one another to offer, you better odds. I mean, the state. I mean, in Nevada, the payout of the slot machines is regulated by the state. I suppose they could give you better odds, but they don't.
No.
So it's not.
Sometimes
they
give you
fair. It's kind of a monopoly thing because they collaborate with one another.
What they'd say is that the competition is in the services that they offer, the associated entertainment and the freebies and so on. So they'd say, we are actually competing. Of course we're competing because we make it more fun to come here than it is to go down there. And that reinforces the idea that the casinos appeal to, which is that people go to the casino in order to have fun rather than in order to try to win money.
Someday I'll get down to Australia and we'll have a time at one of those casinos and we can discuss the immorality of it all and win a lot of money.
Yeah.
Our guest today has been William Barrett of the University of Melbourne. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, William.
Well, thanks a lot, and thanks for all the puns about betting and gambling. I think I can add them to my vast collection now.
Okay. Well, we didn't know whether you'd like puns, but we thought you'll just have to bear it.
Okay. Thanks, Will.
Very funny.
Thanks, Will. So, John, how do you feel wiser today? What do you think about gambling? Is it
I
bad
think,
thing, good thing?
I think Will's a very clear-headed philosopher that makes a lot of good distinctions and explains it very clearly. So I think I understand the whole thing better. I don't think I changed any of my attitudes. I think pushing the lottery is sleazy.
God,
Maybe it's okay to have one, but pushing it the way they do is sleazy.
I agree with you.
I like the nation when we had kind of this outback place, Nevada, and anything goes in Nevada, and everybody else was pretty pristine. You could have a poker game at home or something, but we seem to be undergoing a big change, and I'm not sure I like it at all.
I have to tell you, I love playing poker. It's one of my favorite pastimes. It's a great game. And I love doing it in casinos, but I got to tell you, casinos have a really, really dark side. I've seen many, many poker players ruin their lives. Many, many.
Well, casinos maybe should just be outlawed for being tasteless, apart from gambling, but I suppose that's a pretty snobby and snotty attitude of a Palo Alto philosopher, so forget I said it.
Conversation continues on www.philosophytalk.org.
Luck be a lady tonight. Luck be a lady tonight. Luck if you've ever been a lady to begin with. Luck be a lady tonight.
John, it It's that time again.
What time is that, Ken?
That's conundrum time, when some confused caller calls us up to solve their life's problem.
Well, hey, that's what philosophers are for, to take the confused and then lead them to greater depths of confusion.
Yeah, there you go. And we have a caller in the line now. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, Dan.
Thank you.
Where are you calling from, Dan?
Near Portland, Oregon.
What do you do up there near Portland, Oregon?
I'm a counselor. I'm a psychological counselor.
Oh my goodness! So we're treading on your territory. We gotta watch out here.
Yeah. So are you in a school?
No, I'm not. I'm a volunteer counselor at an agency here in town.
Terrific.
So why did you tell us about your conundrum?
Well, here's the dilemma. As a counselor, I am required by the ethics of my profession and the laws of the state here to report certain kinds of abuse or threats of harm that come to my attention in the course of counseling. However, agencies do not have the funding or maybe at times the inclination to follow up on all types of abuse. Many, if not most, complaints are never followed up. So for me, the conundrum is, what then? If the intent of my reporting is to help prevent further harm to children, for example, and I have almost certain knowledge that no follow-up will be made, what then is my ethical obligation to the child?
Yeah, jeepers, Dan, that's a hard one. I mean, and it upsets me tremendously just to hear the idea that most of reports of abuse are just not going to be followed up upon.
Well, and I'm not implying criticism of the state in this, because it would be impossible, I think, for a state or a county agency to follow up on every report they get of every kind.
What we get here is to the fact that most ethical questions arise in complicated circumstances of a very imperfect world.
Right.
Well, let's grant it's a morally imperfect world, and then you think, well, what should I do? Well, you could think at least two different things. You could think, I'm off the hook, right? I did my part.
Right.
There's not much else I can do because of the imperfection of the world, so I'm off the hook. Or you could think, well, I'm really on the hook now because I now have to perfect this world. But that sounds so daunting because whatever you do, it's still going to remain morally imperfect. There's still going to be thousands of children who are abused, and it's reported and nothing is done. I mean, it's. I hate to say this, but it sounds like we've got a deep, irresolvable dilemma here.
Well, a lot of dilemmas are irresolvable. What other kind of steps could you take in a case where you thought it was going to be ignored by the standard procedure?
Well, that's part of the problem. You can report to multiple agencies, but we also have a problem of confidentiality with the client that can be abridged in these instances where you're reporting to a state agency. But I think the question is a little more delicate if we go beyond that and say go to the person's neighborhood, neighbors, schools, or whatever. And that has an effect on the therapist-client relationship. Sometimes it hurts it.
At the bottom line, you can't feel responsible, and therefore you can't really be fully obligated for the consequences of the moral imperfection of a situation in which you find yourselves. But I do think you can do kind of locally contribute to its bettering in small ways, right? And that don't violate, your therapist-client relationship, that you report, you advocate, and then you just have to live with the fact that you're in a morally imperfect world, and it's not going to go away.
Well, I may disagree a little bit. I certainly don't think it's your job to make the world morally perfect or even your little corner of it. But I do think confidentiality can't be an ultimate and absolute value, or at least it would take some arguments I haven't seen. So I think in these cases you have to make a decision, a tough decision, and you can't be assured you'll make the right decision between the value of confidentiality and the importance of stopping whatever abuse is going on.
John, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, confidentiality in a morally imperfect situation, something has to go.
Does that sound reasonable to you, Dan?
It sounds very reasonable. The caveat is that if you breach the confidentiality and you're wrong, you could lose your license for the breach.
Yeah, that's another risk. That's another moral risk.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, this is a hard one. I don't think we've solved it. It's not clear to me that it has a solution, but we have explored some different philosophical takes on your really deep and moving dilemma.
Thanks for the call, and enjoy the beautiful summer up there in Portland.
Thanks a lot for your discussion. I appreciate it.
If you have a philosophical problem or quandary that's affecting your work or your play or keeping you awake at nights, John and I would be happy to lend an ear and maybe give you some sound advice.
Go to the Philosophy Talk website and poke the conundrums button, or just send email to conundrums@philosophytalk.org. Once again, that's conundrums@philosophytalk.org. Philosophy Talk is a presentation of Ben Manila Productions and the trustees of Leland Stanford Junior University, copyright 2004.
Executive producer is Gordon Earl.
Special thanks to Nicole Sawaya, Roman Mars, Peter Crimmins, and Alan Farley.
Support for Philosophy Talk comes from the Hoover Institution, the Greenwald Foundation, and the Pacific Division of the American Philosophical Association.
Also from various groups at Stanford, the Friends of Philosophy Talk, and members of KALW Information Radio 91.7 San Francisco, where our program originates.
The views expressed on this program, however reasonable and true, do not necessarily represent the opinions of Stanford University or of our funders.
The conversation continues on our website, www.philosophytalk.org. I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. Thank you for listening.
And thank you for thinking.